The tempest struck fiercely that evening. Rain lashed the streets of Baltimore, slicing through the city like blades, etching channels in the gutters. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of damp pavement, machinery grease, and the acrid flavor of abandoned hopes. The streetlights flickered and hissed, burdened by the relentless downpour, casting warped halos onto the wet sidewalk. Neon signs from liquor stores and pawn shops spilled vibrant hues onto the pavement, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere, as if the city were caught in a limbo, oscillating between the pulse of life and the facade of existence. Within the confines of Ruby's diner, the warmth enveloped like a delicate bubble. It adhered to the worn linoleum floor, the tacky vinyl booths, the aroma of stale coffee and sizzling onions that appeared to be infused into the very walls. A location frozen in time, untouched since the 70s, as those who entered its doors lacked the means to alter its fate. Ruby Ellis glided behind the counter with the ease of someone who had internalized every inch of the space. At 43, she carried a burden on her back that time alone could not account for. She donned her fatigue as if it were a shield, her dark curls secured in a neat bun, a rag tucked into the waistband of her apron. Her skin, a rich chestnut hue, shimmered with perspiration despite the chill in the air. As she polished the final counter, her mind wandered to the errand awaiting her. Milk was still on her list for the journey home. She found herself pondering whether her phone bill had been automatically deducted from her account. Engrossed in her musings, she failed to notice the small figure outside at first. Just as she extended her hand to grasp the keys and secure the front door, a fleeting movement caught her attention in the periphery. A figure, petite, motionless, she halted. Through the misty glass, Ruby caught sight of a child, perhaps 7 or 8, curled up in a wheelchair beneath the awning, utterly drenched. A girl, small and motionless like a statue, her hair plastered to her forehead, her coat soaked and heavy, made Ruby's heart sink. She glanced to the left and right, peering through the windows. The street lay desolate, with even the bus stop on the opposite side devoid of any presence. Who would exclude a child from this? She tucked the keys into her apron and swung the door open, the bell above ringing out a cautionary chime. The wind struck her immediately, sharp and frigid, creeping beneath her sleeves and penetrating her very bones. "Hey, darling," she called, striving to maintain a gentle and composed tone. "What brings you out here alone?" The girl remained silent. She gazed up at Ruby, her eyes large and ghostly, her lips quivering from the chill. Her hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair firmly. Ruby knelt next to her. "You've been bested, darling," the girl whispered, almost drowned out by the rain. "I'm waiting for my daddy." Ruby let her eyes drift down the street, where only shadowy windows and glistening puddles remained. "Where is he at this moment?" The girl shrugged, her delicate shoulders rising as if she were unfamiliar with the concept of having answers. Ruby sensed a profound knot tightening in her stomach. "Well, darling," Ruby said, rising and taking hold of the wheelchair handles. "This isn't the place for you to be right now. Please come in if you would. Only until your father returns." The girl offered no resistance. Her fingers relaxed just a bit on the armrests as Ruby guided her into the diner. The warmth within enveloped them like an embrace. The air was thick with the aroma of bacon grease mingling with a hint of sweetness, perhaps remnants of pie from earlier in the day. The door closed firmly behind them, silencing the tumult of the storm outside. Ruby led the girl to a cozy booth by the radiator, where the warmth enveloped them. She retrieved a towel from beneath the counter and gently placed it over the child's shoulders. "What do they call you, darling?" she inquired. "Lila." Ruby beamed, bending down once more to connect with her gaze. "Indeed, Lila, you are now in a place of safety. My name is Ruby." Lila gave a subtle nod. She cast her gaze down to her lap before shifting it to the window, as though seeking clarity in the chaos around her. Her expression was one Ruby had encountered far too often. Children who had mastered silence long before they understood the importance of seeking assistance. "Are you feeling hungry?" Lila paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. She gave a slight nod. Ruby acted without hesitation. She glided into the kitchen, her hands dancing with practiced ease. 2 slices of sourdough nestled in the toaster, cheese ready to melt, butter waiting to spread, and soup simmering on the stove. It was the dish her grandmother prepared on chilly evenings when their only riches were the warmth of the oven and the love they shared. With the soup gently bubbling and the cheese crackling in the pan, Ruby's eyes kept darting to the window, yet there was still no trace of her father. With a graceful motion, she placed the plate and bowl onto a tray, then made her way to Lila. "Here you are, darling." Toasted cheese sandwich paired with a warm bowl of tomato bisque. My grandma was a firm believer in it. Lila gazed at it as if it were the very first meal she had ever received, filled with warmth and generosity. Ruby secured a napkin around her collar and beamed with delight. "Dig in." Lila savored a bite. The cheese elongated, radiant and golden. Her eyes grew large with surprise. "This is the best thing I've ever had," she said, her voice filled with awe. Ruby let out a soft laugh, though a tightness gripped her throat. Delicious cuisine enhances many aspects of life. She positioned herself opposite the girl, allowing her to eat while the storm raged outside, its fury echoing against the windows. The stillness that enveloped them felt not uncomfortable, but rather soothing. It resembles the tranquility that follows a tumultuous event, even if it is just temporary. Ruby was uncertain about the whereabouts of the girl's father. She was bewildered by the kind of world that would abandon a child to the fury of a storm. Yet she understood this. Lila would not experience coldness, hunger, or a sense of invisibility. Not this evening. What Ruby failed to notice was the man stationed across the street, observing every detail as it unfolded. Marshall Grant reclined in the back seat of his sleek black Escalade, the rain creating a hazy veil over the world outside. Neither the driver nor he uttered a word. He instructed his daughter to hold on, just for a moment. A conference call had extended, with investors in Tokyo on the line. He had every intention of returning. He was taken aback by the unexpected presence of another, particularly a black woman in a dilapidated diner, who appeared to be in desperate need of a moment's respite. He observed her gently clean the soup from Lila's chin. For the first time in ages, Marshall Grant found himself at a loss for what to do. The rain had settled into a gentle murmur, softly tapping against the diner windows, reminiscent of a fleeting thought. Lila sat comfortably in the corner booth, her fingers securely clasping the warm ceramic bowl that Ruby had set before her. She savored the tomato soup, each spoonful taken with a deliberate hesitation, as if seeking approval before indulging. The grilled cheese, now partially consumed, rested elegantly on the plate, every crumb perfectly in its designated spot. Even in the manner of her eating, Lila seemed to embody a sense of restraint, as if she were consciously avoiding the act of taking up too much space. Ruby sat opposite her, cradling a mug of coffee that was slowly losing its warmth. Initially, she remained silent, simply observing the girl. Her eyes flickered to the door at regular intervals. The way she would startle at the sound of tires hissing over the slick pavement outside. A story lingered in that flinch. A fear far too familiar for one so young. "Are you cozy enough, darling?" Ruby inquired softly. Lila gave a slight nod. She cast her gaze out the window once more. He mentioned that he would return. Ruby turned her attention to where she was looking. No headlights in sight yet. No elusive silhouette darting across the road, expressing regret for the delay. "Perhaps he's caught in traffic," Ruby suggested. Perhaps the tempest hindered his progress. Lila remained silent. She gazed out the window, as if the concept of waiting had lost all meaning for her. Ruby let out a deep breath. She savored a sip of her tepid coffee and reclined slightly. "Could you share what transpired? How long have you been out there?" The young woman paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Some time." Did he mention his destination? Simply advised to hold on. He received a phone call. Lila's grip on the bowl grew firmer. Ruby refrained from pressing. She sensed the shift in Lila's voice, the way it lowered as if she were shielding him, or perhaps shielding herself from the reality. Ruby had donned that very voice once, Ages passed. Are you local to this area? Lila gently shook her head, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. We're simply here for a visit. Where are you staying? A hotel, the name escapes me. Ruby allowed the quiet to linger, observing as the girl savored another deliberate bite of her sandwich. Her hands trembled less now. Her cheeks were flushed once more. Yet the concern lingered in her gaze. Ruby spoke softly. I used to wait too. It was unclear what motivated her to share that tale. In my youth, I would sit on the front porch, eagerly anticipating my father's return home. Each evening, I would gaze down the street, as if my longing could summon his car to turn the corner. Lila raised her gaze. At times he would show up, and at other times he would not. Yet, I found myself in a constant state of anticipation. Has he returned? Ruby's smile was subtle, occasionally yet insufficiently. Lila gazed into her bowl of soup. It always returns to me. He's simply occupied. Being busy doesn't equate to being absent, darling. Being busy shouldn't lead to feelings of being overlooked. The young girl's lip quivered, yet she pressed her teeth against it. Ruby extended her hand across the table, briefly placing it on Lila's. Simply enough to express, I acknowledge your presence. The bell above the door chimed, drawing their attention upward. Yet, it was merely a man in a drenched parka, murmuring about coffee and the comfort of warmth. Ruby rose and filled a cup for him, accepting his wrinkled bills with a nod as he settled into a seat at the rear. Upon her return, Lila sat with her hands elegantly folded in her lap. Do you own this? She inquired. Ruby let out a soft laugh. Heavens, no. I typically manage the place during the evenings. It is owned by a man named Arturo. Yet, my presence has lingered for such an extended period that others seem to overlook his existence. Lila surveyed her surroundings. It has a pleasant, warm atmosphere. Ruby gave a subtle nod. That's the concept. Visitors aren't drawn to this place for its aesthetics. They arrive with the hope that someone might truly notice them as they enter. They lingered in quietude once more, a stillness that arises when two individuals grasp a sentiment that eludes verbal expression for the moment. The rain outside eased into a gentle mist. May I pose a question to you? Lila exclaimed unexpectedly. Absolutely. What motivated you to assist me? The inquiry took Ruby by surprise. Could you clarify what you mean? You were unaware of my existence. I was merely an outsider. Ruby inclined her body, eager and attentive. You were never an outsider. As a young one, you danced in the downpour. You felt fear. You appeared weary and chilled. Your name is irrelevant. It's clear you were in need of assistance. Lila fixed her gaze on her for an extended moment, as if weighing the truth of her words. My mother often remarked that individuals rarely perform kind acts without expecting something in return. Ruby's breath hitched. She spoke gently. It seems your mother encountered quite a few individuals who weren't the best influence. Lila's eyes brimmed with emotion, yet she blinked rapidly, forcing them back like hidden truths. She whispered, I only want to be with him, even if he's late, even if he forgets sometimes. Ruby gave a slight nod. She held back her thoughts, knowing that often the ones we long for the most are the very ones who cause us the deepest pain. The devotion found in a child is simultaneously captivating and perilous. She rose and made her way to the pie case, retrieved a small slice of apple crumble, and heated it in the microwave before placing it in front of Lila alongside a scoop of vanilla ice cream. There's no fee, she stated. Lila's face blossomed with a hesitant smile. Thank you very much. It was the first genuine smile Ruby had witnessed from her. They lingered in that moment, one savoring their meal while the other observed, until a polished black SUV glided to a stop across the street. The headlights flickered weakly, while the windows were shrouded in a deep, mysterious tint. Lila positioned herself upright. That's him, she remarked. Ruby squinted, unable to discern who was within. The engine continued to hum, and no one emerged from the vehicle. Are you certain? Lila gave a slight nod. He consistently chooses that one. Yet, Ruby felt uneasy about the SUV just lingering there, engine running. Suddenly, The back door swung open, revealing a woman tall, fair-skinned, with blonde hair tucked beneath a drenched Orioles cap. She wore jeans, a hoodie, and boots that seemed too pristine for the dreary weather. She moved with intention, not urgency. Ruby felt a tingle of intuition. She pushed the diner door open and offered a smile, polished and practiced. "Hey, darling," she said. "It's time to leave." Ruby positioned herself between her and the booth. "Are you his mother?" The woman blinked. "Dear Aunt." Lila gazed at the vacant bowl. "Is that really the case, Lila?" Ruby inquired softly. A brief moment lingered, the tiniest of hesitations, yet Ruby noticed it. "Indeed," Lila murmured gently. Ruby knelt next to her. "Are you really certain you want to choose her, darling?" Lila paused for a moment, then gave a slight nod. He dispatched her. Ruby chose not to engage in a dispute. She chose not to involve the authorities. She had spent far too many years in a realm where taking any action could transform her into the antagonist. Before they departed, she reached behind the counter, took a cookie, wrapped it in wax paper, and placed it gently into Lila's hand. She mentioned it was for the journey ahead. Lila's smile reemerged. "You are the kindest individual I have ever encountered." Ruby remained in place, watching as the SUV disappeared from view, engulfed by the downpour that resumed its relentless fall. From the shaded window of the SUV, Marshall Grant observed the diner across the street as if it were a scene unfolding on a screen. His hands were firmly intertwined in his lap, the leather gloves he had set aside lying undisturbed next to him. He remained silent. He hardly flinched. Each movement Ruby Ellis made, every smile, every gesture, and every moment she spent kneeling beside his daughter, carved itself into his memory with the precision of a revelation. This outcome was never part of his intentions. Marshall had crafted a realm defined by meticulousness. Grant Tech began its journey in the humble confines of his parents' garage, evolving into one of the most impactful tech companies in the nation. He made decisions with remarkable speed and precision. He was the sort of individual capable of sealing a billion-dollar agreement with nothing more than black coffee and a red-eye flight. He overlooked nothing. He had never erred, not until this evening, Lila. He had assured me it would only take 5 minutes. Just one quick call. A Singaporean investor seeking some reassurance. He hadn't fully considered the implications when he instructed her to wait outside the diner. The illumination was vivid. It appeared secure. It was intended to last just 5 minutes. Yet, what was supposed to be a brief 5 minutes had stretched into a lengthy 45. In that span of 45 minutes, his daughter had become cold, wet, and hungry, left all alone. A stranger, a woman with no reason to intervene, no duty, no benefit, had chosen to step forward. Marshall adjusted his position in the chair. The rain drummed on the SUV, echoing like the steady beat of a ticking clock. Without a moment's pause, he whispered. She was completely unaware of who Lila was. The driver stole a look in the rearview mirror, yet remained silent. He had discovered long ago that it was wise not to interject when Marshall's voice took on this hushed tone. That was when the most perilous ideas emerged. Marshall delved into his coat pocket and extracted his phone. A sleek black device boasting capabilities that surpassed the typical desktop. He pressed the numbers absent-mindedly. Nora, the voice of his assistant, came through the line without delay. "Please make your way to the Lexington Diner at your earliest convenience. Keep it simple, no fancy shoes, no formal attire." A moment of silence lingered. "Sir, I would like to know everything about the woman who just assisted my daughter. Please provide your name, background, and employment history by tomorrow morning." "Got it," he ended the call. Yet he continued to observe. He watched as Ruby escorted Lila to the door, gently placed a cookie in her hand, and bid farewell as if it truly held significance. He noticed the softness within her, the subtle cues in her posture, the way she bent down to Lila's height rather than looming over her. He perceived the instinct, the nurturing warmth, the authentic care that was impossible to counterfeit. It disturbed him, for he held no faith in the notion of kindness. He had faith in the power of leverage. This woman, Ruby Ellis, had just conjured a debt he could no longer overlook. Nora Winters made her entrance 20 minutes later. She eased into the passenger seat of the SUV, her blonde hair hidden beneath a faded hoodie, droplets of rain clinging to her sleeves. "Is that her?" she inquired, gesturing toward the diner. "Absolutely. Does she really still not know who Lila is?" "Negative." Nora reclined in her seat, observing Ruby through the glass. "She's astute. Immediately recognized the truth behind the aunt narrative. Almost put me on blast." Marshall nodded, yet she allowed her to leave. Nora insisted that she was left with no option. Imagine the atmosphere. A powerful presence commanding attention in a bustling city diner. Even if she has a point, she misses the mark. He remained silent. Nora remarked that she stands apart from the rest. Stood firm, remained true. She simply made the correct choice. "I understand." Marshall leaned in, resting his elbows on his knees, his gaze unwaveringly locked on Ruby. She swept behind the counter, her movements suggesting that the night had stolen something from her. She remained unaware of Lila's identity, not seeking any information. That sets her apart. Nora remarked that this quality makes her perilous. Marshall offered a subtle smile. Quite intriguing. An hour later, Ruby lingered in the doorway of her apartment building, her shoes drenched, the hem of her jeans clinging uncomfortably to her ankles. Her bag weighed down her shoulder, not filled with treasures, but with the fruits of her labor from that day. $32 in tips and 2 complimentary muffins that Arturo allowed her to take home. A receipt for a coat she was unable to retain. The elevator in her building had been out of service for 6 months. She ascended the stairs to the 3rd floor, each step creaking beneath the burden of the day. As she approached her door, she hesitated. A sense of unease lingered in the air. With a gentle twist of the key, she eased the door open, savoring the moment. The apartment was shrouded in darkness, enveloped in silence, yet it was far from vacant. A figure loomed in the kitchen, tall and broad, his coat still clinging with moisture from the rain, yet his shoes remained immaculate. Ruby stood still, her body locked in place. "Who are you?" she demanded, her hand moving swiftly to the pepper spray nestled in her bag. He pivoted with deliberate slowness. The visage was unmistakable Marshall Grant. She identified him from advertisements, corporate publications, and news features. "I'm not here to cause you any harm," he stated with a serene demeanor. "I arrived to express my gratitude." "For what?" she retorted. "For assisting my daughter." The words took her breath away. Ruby gazed intently. "Lila, was that your daughter?" "Indeed." "I'm perplexed. How did you manage that?" "I observed from the other side of the street. I never intended to be away from her for so long." "So what brings you here?" Marshall strolled over to her kitchen table and set a hefty envelope down upon it. It struck the surface with a resounding thud, reminiscent of a judge's gavel falling in a courtroom. He mentioned that it was a job offer. Communications strategist at Grant Tech, earning a 6-figure salary with comprehensive benefits. Ruby blinked at the works, laughed, and shook her head. "Do you really believe that offering me a position makes the situation even? Do you really believe that you can simply purchase your freedom from guilt?" Marshall remained unflinching. "No, I'm not providing charity. I'm providing acknowledgement. What makes me the one?" "Because you saw her," he murmured, his voice now softer. "Neither my funds nor my identity, merely a frightened young girl. Upon seeing her, you enveloped her in a sense of safety." Ruby gazed at the envelope as if it were a ticking time bomb. "You have no idea who I am." "I have sufficient knowledge." Quiet enveloped the room, thick and palpable, gathering in the shadows. With purposeful strides, she traversed the room and grasped the envelope. She replied that she would consider it. Marshall gave a single nod. "That's all I request." He pivoted and walked away, and Ruby lingered there, the proposal clutched tightly in her hands, while a tumult raged within her heart. Ruby lay awake throughout the night. The envelope lingered on her kitchen table, reminiscent of a smoldering wick, ready to ignite a chain of events. She wandered around it for hours, brewing cups of tea that went untouched, gazing at the rain-drenched city beyond her window. The entire situation seemed surreal. It wasn't merely the fact that a wealthy man had entered her apartment without permission. That detail still sent shivers down her spine. Yet due to what he had abandoned, a future she had never dared to envision. 6 figures, benefits, respect, at least that's what the envelope hinted at. Yet Ruby had endured for far too long, toiled with relentless effort, and witnessed far too many truths to place her faith in promises, particularly those made by a man capable of abandoning his daughter in a tempest for the sake of a meeting. At last, she settled into her seat as the first light of dawn began to break. Her fingers lingered just above the flap. As she unsealed it, the heft of the paper took her by surprise. Authentic stationery, letterhead, a formal proposal, compensation specifics, a personal message in flawless cursive. This is not merely a gift. It is an opportunity that has been earned, MG. She reclined and gently shut her eyes. Whispers resonated within her thoughts, predominantly her mother's. Don't allow them to purchase your essence with a salary. Ruby. They'll adorn it beautifully, yet it's still a tether. And yet, this had transcended pride. It had become a matter of survival. The following morning, she ventured onto the uneven pavement of Fayette Street, adorned in her finest thrifted heels and a blazer that carried a subtle scent of mothballs. She held the offer letter in her purse, not out of certainty, but because a part of her craved the reassurance of its presence. She dialed Arturo's number from the payphone on the corner. Arturo, I need to talk to you. I have to take some time off, but I'm not sure how long it will be. Are you all right? I believe it's more than just okay. Did you receive a job offer? Ruby paused, feeling a sense of uncertainty. Are you asking me to reserve your place? She offered a slight smile. If I have any sense, I won't be returning. He let out a low grunt. Well, if you're not the sharpest, there's always a spot for you here. Thanks, Arturo. You were always so much more than just a waitress, Ruby. At a loss for words, she simply ended the call. The Grant Tech building towered as a striking embodiment of glass and aspiration in the center of downtown. Ruby had encountered it countless times in the past, yet she never imagined she would step inside its doors. Upon her entrance, the lobby enveloped her completely. Marble floors gleamed underfoot, sleek chrome accents caught the light just right, and the receptionist appeared as if she had stepped straight off a magazine cover. Ruby announced her presence, striving to mask the tremor in her voice as she mentioned Marshall Grant. The receptionist hesitated for a moment, yet chose not to contest the matter. He awaits your arrival. A silent man in a black suit guided her to the top floor. The ascent in the elevator seemed to stretch on indefinitely. As the doors swung open, Marshall stood there, anticipation etched on his face. He positioned himself before a vast expanse of windows that framed the cityscape, his hands tucked casually into his pockets. Today, he donned a charcoal suit, his expression revealing the toll of a sleepless night. You arrived, he stated plainly. Ruby responded, let's not label this as a yes. I'm simply here to determine if you carry the same weight as that envelope suggested. He motioned toward a leather chair positioned opposite his desk. Take a seat. She did, elegantly crossing one leg over the other, her chin held high with confidence. You will collaborate with my team focused on communications and public strategy. Immediate connection with me. Your role involves uncovering the thoughts, emotions, and needs of those I typically overlook. Your purpose isn't to engage in pleasantries. You've come to test my limits. That seems like a setup, Ruby remarked with a hint of sarcasm. Are you seriously going to allow a black woman with her own perspective to have that level of access? Marshall's lips quivered slightly. I'm not bringing you on board to play it safe. Your calm demeanor when I entered your kitchen is precisely why I'm bringing you on board. She squinted her gaze. What do you truly gain from this? He gave a nonchalant shrug. My company is expanding rapidly, yet we're drifting away from the individuals who contributed to our success. You possess a quality that eludes me, a sense of humanity. That's quite a heavy burden for a single individual to bear. You've shouldered greater burdens. The stillness lingered in the air around them. Ruby gazed thoughtfully out the window. "Is Lila doing all right?" she inquired gently. "She is doing well. This morning she inquired about you." Ruby sensed a constriction in her chest. "Marshall mentioned that he informed her you could be collaborating with me." "So what were her words?" She remarked quite positively. "Now someone will let you know when you're acting foolishly." Ruby let out a hearty laugh. Marshall smiled, recognizing her intelligence. With a tilt of her head, Ruby mirrored her mother's demeanor. "Is she in the picture? Cancer claimed her life 3 years ago. Apologies, gratitude." She rose. "Okay, I'll give it a shot for a month. If it doesn't suit me, I simply move on, no hard feelings involved." "Not a bit." Marshall reached out his hand. With a swift motion, Ruby stirred it, and in an instant, everything around her transformed. The initial week at Grant Tech unfolded like a whirlwind of unfamiliar faces, a barrage of meetings and cautious glances. She sensed the weight of their gazes, as if they were poised for her misstep, attempting to unravel the mystery of her origins and the reason the CEO had bestowed upon her an office. Nora Winters maintained a polite demeanor, yet remained distant. "I see you made it through the first day," Nora remarked in the elevator, her voice barely above a whisper. "Grant is quite a challenge to navigate. He has little patience for those who lack insight. It's fortunate that I'm not." Nora arched an eyebrow. "We'll see." Yet, it wasn't solely Nora. The whole company appeared to hum with intrigue regarding the woman from the diner who had mysteriously secured a place at the prominent table. Ruby was indifferent. She communicated straightforwardly during meetings. She maintained her sharpness, and gradually, others began to pay attention. By the conclusion of her second week, she had already identified a significant public relations oversight in a new campaign aimed at urban markets. She crafted a memo so eloquent that even Nora couldn't help but smirk when she read it. Marshall sent it to the board with a single sentence, "Precisely the reason I brought her on board." The proposal had come amidst chaos, and now, at the eye of a corporate tempest, Ruby Ellis understood she wasn't merely present to endure it. She was poised to redirect its trajectory. The conference room on the 25th floor of Grant Tech was a stunning example of corporate design, featuring walls of floor-to-ceiling glass, a long table that shone like an obsidian runway, and chairs so streamlined they appeared almost uninviting. A space designed to evoke fear, to leave a lasting impression, to exert dominance. Ruby positioned herself at the table's edge, a slender leather portfolio placed before her. She donned the same blazer from the interview, yet it draped differently now, her posture transformed. She lifted her shoulders slightly, her chin firm and unwavering. Yet, she sensed the gaze upon her. A dozen individuals occupied the space, including executives, strategists, and advisors. Predominantly white, primarily male, largely from Ivy League backgrounds. The types of individuals who have never experienced the reality of waiting tables or standing in line for groceries with a food stamp card. The individuals who communicated in shorthand and jargon, who exchanged lives as if they were mere pawns on a chessboard. Opposite her was Philip Langford, the vice president of global strategy, a man whose meticulously styled hair and sparkling cuff links seemed to shout tradition. Ruby had already caught wind of the murmurs. Langford held a disdainful view of her, believing she was merely a strategic hire, a calculated move to project an image of diversity for Grant Tech. Let him believe that, she mused, for the time being. Marshall was the last to arrive, as was his custom, offering a slight nod to Ruby before settling into his position at the head of the table. He unveiled a polished black folder and lightly tapped its edge. "Let us begin," he remarked. Langford took the initiative to speak first. "We have been examining the figures from the Taiwan transition. Shifting our production could lead to nearly a 30% savings in the initial fiscal year. What is it that we forfeit?" Ruby inquired before she could hold back. All eyes were drawn to her. Langford raised an eyebrow. "What did you say?" "You save 30%, she reiterated. "But what do you sacrifice? Employment, societal confidence, communal support? What is the number of employees we are letting go?" Langford offered a constrained smile. "I have my doubts about that being your area of expertise." Ruby remained unblinking. Perhaps the lanes require a fresh outline. Marshall remained silent, offering no defense for her. He simply bided his time. Langford pressed on, his tone somewhat terse. We're not discussing significant job cuts. We are discussing the thoughtful redistribution of resources. The job market in this area is already quite crowded. Ruby inclined her body, eager and attentive. Individuals are not mere pieces on a chessboard. They don't simply relocate to wherever the opportunities arise. These are communities we are displacing, individuals with families and rich histories. You're quite the sentimental one, Langford remarked. That's not the way things operate in the business world. Ruby's smile was icy. Perhaps the business landscape is flawed. Silence, the sort that sparked with tension. At last, Marshall found his voice. We must consider more than merely the figures. Ruby is correct. The way we perceive shapes the influence we have. Let's explore a projection with both scenarios. Langford's expression was far from cheerful, yet he gave a nod. After the meeting, Ruby stepped into the hallway, a palpable tension coursing through her like an electric current. She rested her back against the smooth glass wall and let out a breath. A remarkable first impression. A voice remarked beside her. Nora was the one. She rested against the wall across from her, taking a sip from a paper cup. I wasn't aiming to impress, Ruby replied. That's the reason it was successful. A moment of silence enveloped them. Nora remarked, You don't fit the mold of what this place anticipates. Ruby offered a faint smile. Excellent, you'll require some protective gear. I have navigated life as a black woman in America for 43 years. I entered this world clad in protection. Nora nodded slowly, her gaze contemplative. That's what instills fear in them. The remainder of the day passed in a haze of courteous rejections and forced grins. Ruby found herself in a series of meetings where she remained unacknowledged, except when Marshall was present. At one moment, a junior executive offered her coffee, mistakenly thinking she was there to serve. She wore a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and held onto the coffee for herself. At lunchtime, she found herself seated in solitude at the corner of the executive lounge, savoring a turkey sandwich while going over her notes from the meeting once more. She stood alone, fully aware that no one would come to her side. Yet, it lingered a chilling, silent pain. That evening, upon returning home, she lingered in her darkened kitchen for an extended period, merely standing there, attuned to the rhythm of her own breath, allowing the silence to convey its message. She retrieved a notebook, a familiar companion from her waitressing days, and started to jot down her thoughts. On the third day, they perceive me as a danger, which is a positive sign. It indicates my significance is recognized. But wow, it feels isolating out here on the front lines. She shut the notebook with a sense of finality. The following morning, Ruby approached her desk to discover an envelope, devoid of any name. Only her first name, inscribed in bold, graceful script. Within lay a solitary sheet of paper. Only 2 words, devoid of threats or slurs. Go home. Her heart pounded fiercely as she read it once more. She carefully folded it, placed it on her desk, and inscribed on the back, Not today. With a swift motion, she tucked it away in her top drawer and secured it with a lock. Let them approach. She was firmly rooted in place. As the day progressed, she found herself by the windows, gazing out at the sprawling city below. Marshall accompanied her, initially quiet. Then he remarked, You unsettled the table. I didn't arrive here to remain unheard. I understand, he paused, they aren't accustomed to it. They'll adapt or step aside. Marshall nodded slowly, a sense of approval in his voice. Are you all right? Ruby shifted her gaze to him, truly observing. No, she replied with sincerity, but I will be. He offered the faintest nod, a silent vow that conveyed, I'm here for you. She nodded, withholding her gratitude for the moment. He would need to prove himself first. She glanced back at the window, a smile spreading across her face, for the perspective was far more rewarding from above, despite the arduous journey it took to get there. Ruby had scarcely a week to establish her place before the tempest started to gather. Initially, it manifested in quiet waves. overlooked calendar invites, her access badge inexplicably failing on one of the floors. Soft murmurs that ceased as she entered the space. She reassured herself that it was merely the familiar discomfort of stepping into the light, of embracing her newfound presence. Yet there was an undeniable shift in the way people observed her, more intensely, more chillingly, convincing her that it was not merely a figment of her imagination. Her presence had been recognized as more than mere symbolism. It was evolving into a formidable threat. On Tuesday, Marshall summoned her to his office. "Close the door," he instructed, and she complied. He presented her with a printed email, an internal company report, marked as classified and watermarked. It had just been dispatched to a journalist. Ruby picked up the paper and quickly glanced over it. Her name stood out on the forwarding line. "This isn't mine," she said without hesitation. "I know," Marshall said, observing her intently. "So why does my name appear on it?" The atmosphere grew heavy, as if someone intended to cast you as the scapegoat. "I faced this kind of blaze before," she remarked, "but this one burns fiercer." Marshall reclined, interlacing his fingers. "The board has reviewed it and requested a formal evaluation." She reiterated, "I've been here for under a month, which is why it's impactful. You haven't established any connections here yet, and there's only me to support you." "Then vouch louder." Marshall remained expressionless. "We will follow the lead. Nora is already working on it." Ruby responded with a slow nod. "In the meantime, continue with your work as you always do. Allow them to believe you're unsettled, but I'm not, precisely." She carried the rest of that day with a flame flickering deep within her, igniting her every thought. She navigated the office with an unmatched precision, brushing aside the sidelong looks and the abrupt halts in dialogue. She meticulously recorded every detail, capturing everything from casual comments to the precise times of meetings. In the stillness of her apartment that evening, she meticulously examined her emails, her access logs, and even the text threads. Everything appeared as it should, save for the treachery. She reflected on the note from last week. Return home. She had not returned home, and now someone sought to exact punishment for her decision to remain. Nora visited her office the following morning. "I've been tracking the packet," she said, settling into the chair across from Ruby, who glanced up, and channeled through an external server shrouded in a false identity. "Last night, we received a lead on a secondary IP, which is associated with Eric Calloway." Ruby blinked, while Langford's protege, Nora, gave a nod. After a decade with the company and a spotless record, he has been caught using an unauthorized device on the premises. "We're reviewing the surveillance footage now." Ruby leaned back, questioning, "Why me?" Nora remarked on your entrance, noting it was quite loud. "Your words reveal truths that others shy away from, and that makes you a formidable presence." Ruby drummed her fingers on the desk. "Then we reveal what danger can unleash." She acted without seeking approval. That afternoon, she entered the boardroom ahead of time, without an invitation. As they engaged in their discussion, she placed a hefty folder onto the gleaming wooden table. "This," she said, "is the trace log of the leak. Every path converges at Calloway," a hush enveloping the scene. The group, predominantly male, adjusted themselves in their chairs. Langford's voice pierced the air. "Your access to this was not authorized." "I had every right to stand up for myself," Ruby responded. "You were poised to tarnish my reputation over a mere whisper. Now I'm unleashing a powerful sound." Marshall walked in moments later, clearly informed. He grasped the folder and leafed through the pages. As he raised his gaze, his voice carried an unyielding strength. "With immediate effect, Eric Calloway is placed on suspension while a thorough investigation is conducted. The legal team will take care of everything from here on out." Langford began to speak, but Marshall raised a hand to silence him. The number revealed the truth. "From this moment forward, anyone who attempts to stifle that will face my wrath." The ensuing silence was profound. Ruby straightened her posture. She had transcended the setup. She ignited the room and strolled away unscathed. The atmosphere in the boardroom was thick with unease the next morning. No one took a sip of their coffee. No one was scrolling through their tablets. The whole room sensed a profound change had occurred following Ruby's daring, spontaneous presentation. Yet within that space, surrounded by sharp attire and gleaming footwear, the stakes had never seemed so intimate. Ruby lingered in the corner of the room, arms folded, her posture unwavering and resolute. She had transformed into an exclamation point. She was a burst of enthusiasm. Calloway had been taken away discreetly, yet not without a trace of sound. Rumors spread quickly at Grant Tech, and they were far from clean. There were murmurs that Ruby had crossed a line. Some murmured that she had been clever in her approach. Now they could no longer overlook her presence. Marshall arrived after everyone else. She recognized it as a conscious decision, allowing herself the space to embrace her power before he offered his support. "Let's begin," he stated, his tone sharp. Langford perched at the distant end, a storm brewing within. His allegiance to Calloway transcended mere professionalism. It was a matter of politics. It was foundational. Ruby was fully aware of what she had shattered. One of the board members, an older gentleman with silvering hair at his temples and a luxurious silk tie, leaned in closer. "Ms. Ellis, your proactive approach is truly valued. Are you implying that a senior executive has been manipulating internal systems to set you up, and that there's no backing for this claim?" Ruby locked eyes with him. "I'm not merely proposing it. I've demonstrated it." She tapped the folder once more, now adorned with timestamps, access logs, metadata, and a comprehensive analysis of Calloway's digital footprint. Another member of the board cleared his throat. "Even if this holds true, it is," Marshall interrupted. "We should reflect on the type of atmosphere we've nurtured that made this possible." Ruby observed the transformation unfolding. The delicate disintegration of ease, of self-satisfaction, revealed through each unfolding truth. "What transpired here goes beyond my own experience," she remarked. "It revolves around a society that safeguards its members while penalizing those who deviate from the norm. I became a target for not adhering to the expected path. Perhaps the issue lies not in my actions but elsewhere. Perhaps it's the very line in question." Langford let out a quiet scoff. "This is becoming a matter of politics." Ruby pivoted her gaze towards him with deliberate slowness. "All matters become intertwined with politics when power is at stake. You simply never needed to label it before." That afternoon, the atmosphere of the building was distinctly altered. Not gentler, not simpler, but transformed. She traversed the corridors not with the pride of triumph, but with the modesty of one who had battled to remain seen and emerged victorious. Nora discovered her near the vending machines. Ruby cradled her black coffee, her face a mask of mystery. Nora remarked, "You left nothing but ashes behind in there." "I allowed space for things to flourish again," Ruby responded. "You have created adversaries. I came with a purpose, not for companionship." Nora rested her back against the wall. "You're transforming things at a pace I never imagined possible." Ruby averted her gaze. Change has been long awaited, yet Nora found herself pausing. "My brother works in human resources. He mentioned that discussions are underway regarding restructuring, promotions, and diversity audits." Ruby opened her eyes wide. "So soon? You stirred the foundations." She returned home that evening not to rest, but to create. She opened her grandmother's cherished recipe journal once more, her weary fingers gliding over the delicate, fading script. She crafted 2 fresh entries in her notebook. "On the 16th day, they attempted to shatter my resolve. Now they must coexist with me. Day 17, a single battle may not secure victory, yet it transforms the landscape of conflict." She placed it down gently and reached for a printed email. Marshall asked to meet the following morning, just the two of them. Without help, there is no Nora. She was prepared. The following morning, she entered his office with a serene assurance. Marshall lifted his gaze from the cluttered surface of his desk. She shut the door, indeed. "Take a seat," but she chose not to. He offered a subtle smile. "Fair enough, I take it this pertains to the aftermath," she remarked. "Let's get straight to the point. Your impact has been significant, resonating widely. I've received 3 calls from the press, one from the mayor's office, and another from an activist group eager to arrange a meeting with you. Ruby raised an eyebrow. Is it me? You have transformed into an emblem. Symbols hold no appeal for me, Marshall stood firm. Let's delve into the essence of the matter. I would like you to take charge of our ethical review task force, oversee new hiring protocols, foster community partnerships, and shape the entire foundation of our approach to treating individuals. It's not only about the appearance, but also the sound. Ruby's heart raced with intensity. She remarked on that kind of move. It creates a target on me that's twice as large, he acknowledged, along with a platform that's twice as expansive. She thought it over, then said, if I have complete authority to hire my own team and my own budget line, then you can have it. What about Langford? Marshall took a moment to reflect. We are contemplating his future. Are you referring to his departure? At last, Ruby let out a breath. Then I shall proceed, but according to my own conditions. Marshall reached out with his hand. I was hoping you'd respond that way. She refrained from shaking it. She simply nodded and exited the room. The following day, her name was featured in the internal newsletter. Ruby Ellis, Director of Strategic Equity and Ethics. Many employees were unaware of its significance at that moment, but understanding would come in due time. Since Ruby was absent to adorn the walls with phrases, she arrived with the intent to dismantle and create something far superior. The auditorium hummed with excitement. Neat rows of folding chairs adorned the gleaming gym floor, balloons swaying gently from each alternating seat. The atmosphere was charged with a unique vibrancy. As parents, teachers, and students gathered, creating a moment that feels truly special and rare, occurring just once a year. Commencement day. Ruby positioned herself at the front, her dress impeccably pressed, her shoes gleaming, a solitary yellow rose delicately held in her hand. It had been years since she last donned a dress, the memory tied to her mother's funeral lingering in the background. Today unfolded in a way that was unlike any other. Lila was set to graduate. The girl she had once discovered trembling in the downpour now sat elegantly dressed, her wheelchair embellished with ribbons and sparkling wheels. Her smile had the power to illuminate the whole city block. Next to Ruby, Marshall fidgeted with his tie for the 5th time. Do you believe she's feeling anxious? Ruby grinned slyly. She's more prepared than both of us. They observed each student stepping onto the stage, one by one, to collect their diploma. Some marched confidently while others faltered. Lila moved forward with elegance, her chin lifted proudly. As the announcer proclaimed her name, she lifted her arms high in a gesture of victory. The audience burst into cheers. Ruby's hands struck together with fervor. Pride surged within her, powerful and resonant. Lila had triumphed against all expectations, even during those times when surrender felt like the simpler choice. Following the ceremony held under a vast expanse of blue sky, Lila approached them, her diploma resting on her lap. Text, you did it, darling, Ruby said, kneeling next to her. Lila smiled broadly. I said I would do it. Marshall knelt as well, presenting a delicate velvet box. This is intended for you. Lila opened it to discover a delicate gold bracelet inscribed with the phrase, "You were never alone." Her eyes brimmed with tears. Ruby embraced her warmly. Our affection for you knows no bounds. In that fleeting instant, time itself seemed to pause. As the evening wore on, Ruby found herself positioned at the threshold of the community center's main hall. The Carter Grants Foundation had its official opening. A space created for marginalized youth, supported by Marshall's company, yet inspired by Ruby's vision. A haven for children seeking refuge, guidance, comfort, and above all, a sense of hope. The ribbon-cutting ceremony had just concluded, and the atmosphere was alive with laughter, music, and the enticing aroma of fried chicken from the local soul food establishment that Ruby had insisted on for catering. She surveyed the scene, taking in the families, the joy, the illumination. The room radiated a warmth that transcended the mere function of the heating system. It was authentic, deserved, vibrant. Ruby glided from one table to another, engaging with parents, offering firm handshakes, and embracing children. She recalled a few of them from her time spent on the late shift at the diner. Some from the community events she once dedicated her time to, back when she was filled with aspirations. "Did you actually do this?" a teenager inquired, her eyes filled with wonder. "I accomplished it, but I had help." "Did you create all of this?" Layer upon layer, phrase upon phrase. Marshall materialized next to her, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. "You did well," he remarked. She took the glass, yet refrained from taking a sip. "No, we performed well." He cast her a glance. "You're not the person I encountered in that diner." Ruby gently shook her head, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. Indeed, she remains present, now with a newfound confidence in her stance. They raised their glasses in a cheerful toast. Later that night, long after the chairs had been stacked and the lights dimmed, Ruby found herself seated alone on the front steps of the center, her notebook resting in her lap, pen poised in her hand. On day 45, Lila crossed the stage today. I also crossed something. Perhaps it's an end, perhaps a start, perhaps a blend of the two. Day 46, we unveiled a structure, yet it signifies so much more. It's a commitment, one I fully plan to uphold. She shut the notebook with a decisive motion. Marshall joined her without a word, a soothing stillness enveloping them both. Above, the stars twinkled softly. "Do you still sense that you're on the fringes?" he inquired eventually. She beamed with delight. "Now I feel like a creator of structures." He gave a slight nod. "Excellent, as there is still much to create." They remained in that moment until the clock struck midnight, engaging in a dialogue that spanned the vast and the trivial, contemplating the cost of bravery, the solitude that comes with guiding others, and the joy that still lingered within them. Marshall reached into his coat and retrieved a faded photograph of Lila, just 6 years old, radiating joy alongside her late mother at the beach. He remarked that she would have felt a sense of pride today. Ruby captured the image with a delicate touch. "She ought to be. You nurtured her with affection, even in the absence of perfect resources. She truly deserved more. Everyone does. Yet, there are moments when we can rise to become the person that another truly deserves." He couldn't help but smile at that. The board is considering the addition of a new seat, someone to represent this center, someone who understands both perspectives. Ruby arched an eyebrow. "Are you inquiring?" "I am getting you ready." She chuckled gently. "Allow me a moment to regain my composure." He gazed at her. "You seem destined for movement, not for remaining in one place." The breeze danced among the branches. For the first time in ages, Ruby was blissfully unaware of the chill around her. She sensed her preparedness. The days after the center's opening flowed with a soothing cadence, reminiscent of a long-awaited event finally coming to fruition. After years of relentless haste, Ruby Ellis's mornings finally started with a sense of calm. Not quite silence, you see. Her days brimmed with activity, yet there lingered a sense of tranquility, a constant rhythm of intent. She reached the Carter Grants Foundation ahead of the opening time. Someone was always there, waiting. A young person filled with curiosity, a mother burdened by concern, and a boy too reserved to voice his thoughts yet yearning for guidance. And Ruby was present, offering answers, coffee, and a comforting embrace strong enough to hold space for their narratives. What she hadn't anticipated was the extent of their offer in exchange. One morning, she found herself unexpectedly confronted in the hallway by a girl who appeared to be no older than 15. "Ms. Ruby, is that your usual style?" she inquired, gesturing towards her sleek blazer. Ruby let out a soft laugh. "Are you not a fan of it? You definitely have a cool vibe, but there's also a hint of intimidation about you." "Excellent," Ruby beamed. "That's how I keep those who attempt to dominate us on their toes." The girl chuckled and strolled away, feeling more buoyant than ever, and Ruby sensed it deep within her being. What it signifies to be anchored in a location that relies on you. The significance of finally finding a place to call home. In the meantime, news of the foundation circulated rapidly. The story caught the attention of various media outlets. Once a waitress, now a corporate powerhouse, she is transforming the future of Baltimore. Supporters reached out, educational institutions dispatched correspondents. City officials began to reach out, eager to gain insights from their approach. However, with attention also came examination. Her ascent was not met with universal acclaim. Langford, despite being distanced from Grant Tech's strategic board, continued to wield influence. During a council event, Ruby spotted him from across the room. His jaw clenched as he conversed with an individual from the mayor's office. Nora cautioned softly, "He's still seeking revenge." Ruby took a sip of her water, then allowed him to suffer for it. She remained unyielding. She had discovered long ago that being upright made one a target. Yet it also illuminated your presence to those who are still navigating their paths. 7 days later, Ruby received an invitation to present at a national conference focused on ethics and equity in the technology sector. She stood on a stage beneath blazing lights, gazing out at a vast expanse of suits and doubt. She opted not to follow a script. Her words resonated deeply. "Once I served tables," she remarked, "and I cherished it because I could truly observe people, genuinely observe them. Observing individuals as they dine reveals a wealth of insights, concerns, happiness, pride, and even moments of embarrassment. The lessons I gained from that experience provided deeper insights into leadership than any corporate setting ever might." She took a moment to stop. The essence of our creations loses significance if we overlook the individuals they are intended to serve. Innovation devoid of inclusion merely serves as another means of erasure. The room was enveloped in a gentle, undulating wave of applause. It expanded. It ascended. Ruby remained stoic, offering no smiles for the cameras. She beamed for every woman who had been urged to remain silent. Every child who felt the system was not designed with their needs in mind. Each second she had lingered in uncertainty about her value. She departed from that stage with a multitude of offers, advisory positions, collaborations, and literary works. She declined the majority of them. What she was creating in Baltimore held greater significance. One evening, several weeks following the speech, Marshall arrived unexpectedly at the center. He discovered Ruby in the garden alongside Lila, both kneeling in the earth, sowing marigolds. "You still haven't figured out how to take it easy," he remarked. Ruby glanced upward, brushing the sweat from her forehead. "Blooms are not patient." "I need to speak with you," he said, in a hushed tone. She brushed off her hands and stepped in after him. They found themselves in the same office that, not too long ago, had a bare floor and unpainted walls. "I'm taking a step back," Marshall stated. Ruby's eyes fluttered open. "Excuse me?" "From the daily grind, from Grant Tech. Nora will be stepping up as interim CEO. The moment has arrived. So you're saying that it's because I want you on the board. Complete seat, not merely the base, the entire damn vessel." Ruby crossed her arms. "What makes me the one?" He wore a smile. "When the world abandoned my daughter to the chill, you welcomed her into the warmth. Your actions weren't motivated by the desire for recognition. Your motivations were not driven by a desire for power. Your actions were driven by a sense of righteousness. And that's precisely the legacy I wish for this company to hold in its memory." She hesitated before giving her answer. She lingered with it. She strolled through the center's corridors, engaged with the teens, and absorbed their aspirations. Then she agreed, for the table required transformation. And she wasn't merely taking a seat. She was completely overhauling the entire project. Ruby Ellis made history as the first black woman to join Grant Tech's executive board. Her portrait adorned the lobby, accompanied by a brass plaque that read, "She saw the unseen. She nourished those in need." Her gaze remained unwavering. Each time she walked by, memories of that night flooded back to her. The diner, the tempest, the boy in the wheelchair, the grilled cheese sandwich that altered the course of fate. Yet above all, this was what lingered in her mind. True kindness, when expressed authentically, transcends mere moments. It's a heritage. The morning sun poured through the expansive windows of the Grant Tech executive floor, its golden rays shimmering on the polished marble, embodying a sense of hope. Ruby gazed out from the glass wall of her new corner office, observing the city gradually come to life below her. The journey had been lengthy. From the rain-soaked streets of Baltimore to this towering view, each step had etched something into her. Perhaps resilience or grace, or a blend of both. Today signified her inaugural meeting as a full board member. Yet it also represented something more profound, her transformation. She pivoted as Nora tapped gently on her ajar door. "Are you prepared?" Nora inquired, her tone steady yet tinged with a sense of pride. "As I will ever be." Nora entered the room. "Your agenda is established. You're initiating the meeting. Are you okay with that?" Ruby gave a subtle nod. "I have some thoughts ready to share." Nora beamed with delight. "They will pay attention." "They had better," Ruby remarked. "I have been silent for far too long." The atmosphere in the boardroom had shifted. Gently yet unmistakably. The old guard remained. Men clad in tailored suits, their eyes shrouded in caution. However, there were also unfamiliar faces present. A young Latina woman working in product development, alongside a trans man from the legal department. Individuals who have experienced narratives rarely shared in settings such as this. Ruby positioned herself at the forefront of the table. "Before we start," she stated, "I want to emphasize what true power really means." Silence enveloped the room. True strength lies not in one's title, but in the duty one embraces. And I'm not here to use it as a tool for harm. I'm here to ensure we remember our purpose. To prioritize the needs of individuals over mere financial gain. She locked gazes with everyone present. "I refuse to allow us to revert to our former selves. This table has expanded in width. Let's ensure that all those who are worthy of a place understand that they truly belong." Silence filled the room. No one was required to. They paid attention. And that sufficed. As dusk settled, Ruby made her way to West Fayette Street. The diner remained, its neon sign flickering gently, reminiscent of a familiar companion. She stepped inside, greeted by the familiar chime of the bell, the unmistakable aroma of charred coffee and sizzling onions filling the air. Arturo, lingering behind the counter, glanced up and smiled broadly. "Well, if it isn't the illustrious Madame Big Shot herself." Ruby chuckled softly as she settled into her familiar booth. "I wanted to take a moment to reflect on my beginnings." Arturo filled her cup with coffee. "So, what's your destination?" She surveyed the room, taking in the patrons, the inviting atmosphere, the stories etched into the laminate tables. Somewhere grander, yet always accompanied by this. Later that week, Ruby found herself back on a stage, this time at a quaint community college not far from her childhood home. She stood before the audience, ready to deliver the commencement address. She gazed at the assembly of students, a significant number being first generation, some balancing parenthood, and many navigating the challenges of mere survival rather than flourishing. She recognized her reflection in their gaze. "When I was your age," she started, "I believed that success was measured by how far one could go. Separated from hardship, from the challenges of yesteryears. Yet I discovered a valuable lesson." She hesitated. "Success is not measured by how far you go, but by how deeply you engage. It's about what you hold within, not what you flee from. It's about the people you elevate as you ascend. The legacy you create continues to flourish long after you have departed." A silence enveloped the crowd. "Once I worked as a waitress, and I found more dignity in that role than in many corporate settings, as it imparted the one lesson that truly counts. Individuals are important. If you let that slip from your mind, you lose it all." She shut her notes with a decisive motion. "Guide with compassion. Strive with intention. When the door remains shut, create a new one." The applause resonated through the venue, a thunderous wave of appreciation. The last whispers of spring gracefully transitioned into the warmth of summer. Lila had recently wrapped up her inaugural year at college. She shared with Ruby weekly updates, snapshots of campus life, notes from her beloved literature class, and one unforgettable line that lingered in the air. "I became a member of the student government. You often advised me against waiting for someone to create room." Ruby printed it out and affixed it above her desk. At times, coming full circle transcends mere return. It embodies the essence of transformation. Ruby Ellis had transformed into the woman she had longed for in her youth. A woman who embraced the space for others to thrive. The type who entered boardrooms, bringing along every spirit that the world sought to overlook. In the stillness of the night, when the city had settled into a hushed calm and the lights had faded, Ruby found herself in her office, flipping through the pages of her well-worn notebook for what she knew would be the final time. She flipped to a new page, marking day 365. A year back, I offered a child soup along with a warm smile. Today, I offered her a glimpse of what lies ahead. In the process, I discovered my own. She placed the pen aside, shut the book, and ventured into the future, the conclusion.